So the biggest surprise in the NBA this past weekend was the Atlanta Hawks nagging the #1 overall pick in the NBA draft lottery for the upcoming 2024 NBA draft. And the reason this is significant is because Atlanta is literally on the brink between being just a playing tournament team and actually being a playoff contender and actually probably being a championship contender, right? We've been thinking with this Hawks roster that they are like one or two really good pieces away from actually competing for a title. And it's not crazy to say that because in 2021, they made an Eastern Conference Finals run. And I've always said this, and I had a video on this a few weeks ago, that the Hawks have always been pretty confusing since 2021 because they haven't reached that level of success since then, despite having the same roster as they had in 2021. Same coach. They followed up that season with a horrible start. Then they go out and get another head coach in Quinn Snyder. Then they bring in DeJounte Murray. We thought all was going to be good there. And then again, same issue. Last year, they lost in the first round to the Celtics after being a play-in team. And this year, they lost to the Chicago Bulls in the play-in tournament, ultimately losing their positioning as a playoff team. So their follow-up to 2021 has been pretty bad. I don't know what to attribute it to because, like I said, what they already had before was a team that got super deep and could have went to the NBA Finals in 2021 if Trae Young doesn't get hurt in that conference finals series against the Milwaukee Bucks. They could have went to the NBA Finals, and if they would have met up against the Phoenix Suns, that wasn't a matchup that they would have gotten blown out in. If they could have beaten Milwaukee, who ended up being the defending champions, they could have beaten the Phoenix Suns if fully healthy. And like I said, since then, they have not been able to match that level of success. So now with this #1 overall pick, they have so many options. One, you can keep this #1 overall pick and bring him around whoever it is, bring him around Trae Young and DeJounte Murray if you elect to keep both of those guys. Or if you want to trade one or two of those guys, you could package them for more pieces and go with Trae Young, another second option, and also the #1 overall pick, whoever they end up going with. Or you could package that #1 overall pick along with a player and get back a massive haul. So maybe you can package that #1 pick with like a DeJounte Murray and get a ton of big time assets back on your roster, maybe another second star level player to pair alongside with Trae Young. So there are a number of options here. Thing about this draft that people have said is that there is not a lot of superstar power in this draft. And in this top 5, there are a lot of guys who are considered projects, like the #1 overall pick, the projected #1 overall pick, depending on where you're looking at, is Alexandre Sarr. He's a project, right? Offensively, especially, he's a project. And there are some things defensively he also has to sharpen up on. But there isn't like one thing right now where you're looking at it and you're like, yeah, this guy's going to be super dominant at that. Right now, Alexandre Sarr, people are drafting him or projecting him so high based on his upside. But from what we've seen, he's not a guy who's going to come in year one and completely dominate. There are a lot of small things defensively he has to get better at, and a lot of big things offensively he needs to get better at. Right now, he isn't much of an offensive threat if he goes to play on that NBA level and get things started. And then you have Zachary Ricochet, right? Another guy who has a lot of upside, but again, not a guy ready to dominate in his first season, really depending on where he ends up going. The guy I think I'm most confident in right now to come in and make this immediate year one impact is Rob Dillingham, because I just love his ability to shot create. And in my opinion, if you can shot create at a high level, right, and also be able to knock down shots off the catch, which is what he's going to be able to have to do, being a top 5 level pick and playing alongside whoever he's playing alongside with. If you can do that, then a lot of other things are going to kind of work their way around that, right? But I don't feel the same about Sarr and Ricochet and a couple of other guys because I just think they are projects. And right now, they have a lot of stuff they have to work on, especially with their offensive game, especially Alexandre Sarr. So if you're looking at the Hawks right now, essentially, if you draft, because we can pretty much rule out Rob Dillingham to go to Atlanta, right? I think it'll be a nightmare try to pair him alongside with Trae Young. Defensively, not much is going to get done, and both of those guys need to have the ball in their hands, Rob especially if he wants to develop. I don't really see him developing well playing alongside with Trae Young, and that's not a knock on anybody. Same with DeJounte Murray. You're going to give up Trae Young and bring in Rob Dillingham, or you're just going to bring in both of those guys to play alongside with him. That doesn't make much sense. So I think we can all rule out Rob Dillingham as the Hawks' first pick, and I think the guy they'd most likely take if they keep it is Alexandre Sarr. But does it make sense to go for Alexandre Sarr? Does it make sense to really have that top overall pick right now when we know where they need to be at? We know they're actually trying to contend for a title. I don't think so. To me, with this draft, you are essentially, if you're drafting within the top 5, you are essentially drafting an inexperienced role player. None of these guys are ready right now, in my opinion, and none of these guys right now have franchise level upside. And we've seen drafts like that before where guys we've seen get picked aren't championship number one option upside type of players, right? And I think that's the thing with this particular draft. So for Atlanta, if you pick up Alexandre Sarr, you're plugging him in that roster, and let's assume they're keeping DeJounte Murray and Trae Young, you're plugging him in there to be a defensive stopper. So you're essentially plugging him in there to be a role player, right? Why bring him in there, an inexperienced role player with a ton of stuff that he needs to get better at, into a situation where you're trying to contend for a title now? Why bring him in when you can package him and get a much higher level experienced player? I'm not saying the Heat are going to depart with him, but Jimmy Butler, who knows, right? There are a lot of rumors about the Heat looking to trade him. I don't know how truthful that is. There's a lot of speculation around that, but who knows, if you can package that top pick with the DeJounte Murray, you can get a lot back for that. What if you go send him over to the Clippers and get maybe a Kawhi Leonard, right? Like that could be a situation there where the Clippers can look to go into a different direction in a different, a different area. But there are a lot of different things they can do here. But I think the best choice here for the Hawks is to ship away this top overall pick, because like I said, you are bringing in somebody. Whoever you bring in, right, outside of Rob Dillingham, which doesn't make sense in the first place, you are bringing in essentially someone who's going to play a role player role, and he's going to be inexperienced. And this isn't the situation that he would thrive in, because this Hawks team has to get over the hump. Period, point blank. They're like on the brink of being really, really good. They showed the ability to be really, really good, and have just disappointed since then for 3 years. To me, they have something, right? They can actually win with Trae Young being their top guy, or Trae Young being on this roster. They just need to make the right moves and have the right roster. And I think that would mean a lot more for them to shift this pick out and try to get another high level, more experienced player to play next to Trae Young. If you package this top pick with DeJounte Murray, you are getting back a ton. Like if you go send him over to like a championship contending team, or a team that's on the brink of championship contention, that's willing to part from a superstar player or all-star level player to get a little bit younger, right? To get some more defensive upside, you're getting Sarr and you're getting DeJounte Murray, right? There are teams out there who will be willing to take that package in and probably give up an offensive guy who's not really helping them get over the hump that the Hawks can see a ton of benefit from. A lot of people forget that trades are made so benefits are brought to both parties. So maybe there's a team who has a stronger need for defense. Vice versa, the Hawks have a strong need for defense as well, but are also looking for a real viable second option that fits with Trae Young. So if they can find that type of deal out there, that type of team that's looking for the assets that they have, then they can make a lot happen and they can finally get over the hump. So there are a lot of possibilities out of this Atlanta Hawks thing. I'm really excited to see what they do. But essentially, man, they're playing with house money right now. They really, really are. And as I said, there are a lot of expectations for this team. There have been a ton of expectations for this team since 2021. I do believe they can still get there. I do believe there is still a level they can take it to, with Trae Young being on this roster. I'm not ready to give up on the Trae Young era just yet here in Atlanta and then just go straight into a rebuild. I still think there's a little bit more juice in that lemon they can squeeze out. They just really have to play their cards right. And to me, they would get more benefit out of packaging this top overall pick and maybe DeJounte Murray to get a ton of assets back to better build this roster to contend for an NBA title, which can definitely happen because they were just on the brink of it not too long ago. Right. So we'll see what ends up happening with the Hawks. A lot of possibilities. Really interested to see how the rest of this draft works out here, because not only are the Hawks a team that's like borderline playoff, that's drafting top 5, the Houston Rockets are as well. They just missed the playoffs. They almost got in there. They have a top 5 pick. Who do they bring in? They could use another really good role player. So that is an example of a team that could use another project, that could use another really good role player, young guy to fit in there and develop with the rest of them under really good coaching. And Ime Udoka. Udoka's shown the ability to do very well with projects. We saw what he did in year 1 with Thompson, right? Cam Whitmore and guys like that. So a lot of possibilities, a lot of things that could end up happening, but it is going to be very interesting seeing what happens before draft night and especially on draft night.